Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hello, everybody, and a good Monday. My name is Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk at text line 447-KSGF. If you would like to send in any questions, comments, feel free to do so there. We will generally on Mondays, we have Congressman Burleson, but with flight stuff, he is going to be joining us tomorrow after 6:30. So if you aren't able to catch that, of course, then you can get it later on the podcast version of the show, either at ksgf.com, Spotify, iTunes, or any of the other places. And we will get an update on the continuing resolution situation. We'll talk about that somewhat in a bit. There has apparently been a continuing resolution, which this is what, of course, we've been accustomed to, and Republicans every time saying, well, this will be the last one, this will be the last one. And Congressman Burleson is certainly no fan of them. The idea behind this continuing resolution, though, is to take away from Democrats the ability to scare Republicans into conceding certain things in the face of a government shutdown. And this is a weapon that has been used by Democrats against Republicans. It's such an odd thing because Republicans, it doesn't matter who's responsible for it. Republicans as a party are always afraid that they'll get blamed for it. Even when McCarthy was Speaker of the House, I recall polling that showed a majority of Americans with this upcoming potential government shutdown that was going to occur during that one particular time because of budget issues. And a majority of Americans said that they believed Democrats were, if the government shut down, Democrats would be the ones responsible for it. Yet the Republicans still were so concerned, or at least they pretended like they were concerned in order to go ahead and push through what Democrats wanted, another continuing resolution. And so we've just been through this over and over and over again. So the idea behind this, and we'll get Congressman Burleson's thoughts on it tomorrow and where he's standing on it, is that this continuing resolution is going to fund us through the end of the year, and it doesn't increase any spending. Now, it does in some areas, but it actually offsets it by cutting in other areas, which is something we have not seen for a very, very, very long time. And then Democrats cannot use the threat of shutting down the government in order to get final concessions. And I could imagine Trump recognizing that Republicans do a very, very bad job at this, and that is why he's wanting the continuing resolution, because he knows that Speaker Johnson is not going to be able to get enough Republicans rallied together, all on the same page, who will stand up against Democrats. And again, I think some of them aren't actually afraid of being blamed for such a thing. I think what actually is occurring here is they use that as cover. They want these things to go ahead, the additional spending, the big government, but they'd rather just say, well, we'll get blamed for the shutdown. That's why we're doing it. But all that aside, this is, we're told, done so that Trump can get his agenda through. The other interesting caveat to this is that Democrats, so it will take the continuing resolution 60 votes in the Senate, which means Democrats have to get on board. Now, there was some question to begin with as to whether Republicans in the Senate would even, the leadership, allow it to come up. But it's believed they will, because if they don't, then they would get blamed for the government shutdown should a continuing resolution not get passed. So go ahead, bring it up, and then the burden's going to be on the Democrats. And Trump has been pretty good about this marketing so far, the positioning of this, saying, hey, Democrats have already threatened they will shut down the government. John Fetterman has said he will not support a government shutdown, so that would be one Republican or a Democrat vote, but 60 is needed. So this is going to put Democrats in for once, because Trump is sort of steering and navigating this thing, it's going to put Democrats on the defensive. And because of Trump, This is, I think, something that the American people are going to recognize. If the government does shut down, this is going to fall on Democrats. So we'll see. And like I said, Congressman Burleson will join us tomorrow after 6:30 in order to talk just a bit about that and give his thoughts on it as well. Massey, back in February, said he would vote against it as a Republican in the House. And as you know, there is not a lot of wiggle room. So we could end up with a situation where the continuing resolution doesn't even get enough votes in the House. So we'll see. I honestly don't like talking about it because it just feels like it's just the same thing over and over and over again. Well, because it largely has been. And every single time we're told, yes, but this time is different, see. This time we're doing it for this reason so that we don't have to do it next time. But there's always a next time. It's quite frustrating. I know you feel it as well. Doge has found $312 million in loans. This is COVID money. $312 million in loans that were given to children. This is the latest Doge fine, or at least one of the latest. Department of Government Efficiency, that being Doge, announced a further wave of contract terminations late Saturday, noting that they also identified thousands of cases where more than $300 million in loans were given to children. Children. The announcement came as the Elon Musk-led agency continues to root out waste, fraud, and corruption in the federal government. Doge said it identified that the Small Business Administration granted nearly 5,600 loans for $312 million to borrowers whose only listed owner was 11 years old or younger at the time of the loan. The loans were issued in 2020 and 2021 while the world struggled with the COVID-19 pandemic. It is unclear what they were used for. The agency wrote, while it is possible to have business arrangements where this is legal, this is highly unlikely for these 5,593 loans, as they all also used a social security number with the incorrect name. They added, at Doge and SBA Gov are working together to solve the problem this week. When making the announcement, Doge shared a post on X from Tuesday where it also revealed that in 2020 and 2021, the SBA issued over 3,000 loans for $330 million to borrowers over 115 years in age. Those borrowers were still marked as alive in the Social Security database. In one case, a 157-year-old individual received $36,000 in loan, the agency said. The loan included PPP, that's the Paycheck Protection Program, and EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So you have hundreds of millions of dollars in COVID loans going out to people over the age of 115. You have hundreds of millions of dollars of COVID loan dollars going out to people under the age of 11. And so, this is just the latest. And it will also, of course, give Democrats an opportunity to accuse Republicans of taking money away from kids and the elderly. That's, of course, the way that they would position it. We've got traffic coming up here in just a moment. Do you want to go ahead and do the weather for us there?
Sure.
Miss Sarah.
Thank you. The first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. It's going to be a beautiful week this week. Today we're going to see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny skies with a high near 77. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 75.
There is a continued effort by the media to make it appear as if there are these grave divisions within the Trump administration. And this is something that has been going on since the beginning. Oh, they're fighting. Oh, Marco Rubio and Elon Musk. Oh, this is how. All these cabinet members are fighting with Musk. Who's really in charge? They keep trying to stir all of this up, which, again, is pretty hysterical given we're supposed to believe that Trump is a dictator. Yet there is all this dissent in the ranks. That's not the sort of thing one sees within a dictatorship. And while the Democrat Party really is truly rudderless, the left is desperate to try to portray the Trump administration as having this great dissent within its own ranks, despite the fact that even people on the left have to acknowledge, and they have at times, never has there historically, ever, been any administration that has had it as together in order to get things done as this administration has in the first 6 weeks now of the administration. Particularly for government, to be clicking along, you watch these different people, whether it is Lutnick from the Commerce Department or Noem or Rubio, or you just go down the list of different people who are out there speaking on behalf of the administration. And I mean, they are all in absolute lockstep. You think back to the Biden administration, in which almost on a daily basis there were contradictory messages coming out of the administration, like by officials, not on the background or off-the-record stuff, but you would have Blinken out there saying something that was a direct contradiction to what Biden had said earlier that morning. And so much of the interviews that were done, even by Biden administration-friendly networks, which is virtually all of them, it was just simply trying to clean up that mess constantly. So when you see this attempt to try and portray the Trump administration as being chaotic and all of this dissent going on, and nobody knows who's in charge, it's remarkable how they are all on the same page nonetheless. Secretary of Commerce Lutnick was on Meet the Press with Kristen Welker, and she tried to continue the narrative about this, who's really in charge question here. Is it you? Is it Musk? Whatever is going on.
Who did the president say was in charge? You and the other cabinet secretaries, or Elon Musk?
He is in charge. Let's be crystal clear. He did not tell me I'm in charge.
But of your agency, who's in charge of your agency?
We listen to him.
I understand that, but who is in charge of your agency, you or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk is your partner. He's your partner in technology. He's your partner in thought. He's your partner in doing it. What President Trump made clear is that Elon is your partner. And that is what we'd like. You have the greatest businessman and greatest technologist in the world as my partner. You got to ask me, what do I think? Thank God I would have Elon Musk come and help me. There's no one watching this TV right now who, if Elon Musk said he was going to come over their house and help them, wouldn't cheer. You have the best technologist and the richest guy in the world said, I'll help you. Come on. We want his help.
Now, any idiot can understand how this all works. Just to the point of the question, and what is being asked here is off of this. Who's in charge of all these cuts? And so here's the deal. Elon Musk is in charge of Doge, and that is an organization, that is an entity that does these evaluations in these different areas of government. And then let's say it's in the Commerce Department or something that is under the umbrella of the authority of the Commerce Department. Those recommendations are then turned over, I'm sure, to the president as well, but to the head of that department. And then that person, cabinet member or otherwise, will determine whether or not to accept all of it, some of it, that plus more. Well, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Elon Musk is in charge of Doge, And then all of the department heads are in charge of the implementation, how much of it gets implemented, if any of it gets implemented. And of course, Trump could, let's say you have, Secretary of State and Marco Rubio, and there are certain things that in his evaluation of the DOJ recommendation says, well, I don't like this, but I do like that. But Trump disagrees with it. And then Trump, as president, could, of course, tell Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, now you do need to go ahead and implement this. This is really not that complicated. Unless you're ignorant. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but listen, you got to understand. If you get your news from the mainstream media, you are ignorant. You're ignorant as to what is actually going on because they don't, this isn't what they do any longer. That's not their, quote, job. Now, of course, the alternative to just ignorance is deliberately misleading the American people, and it may be a mixture of that in the media. I think sometimes we do credit the media too much in the nefarious nature of their motivations, and because we find it difficult to believe that they can be as ignorant as they appear to be at times. But as time goes on, it becomes more and more clear how ignorant people in positions who certainly have access to the information truly are. Caroline Leavitt shutting down, quote, pitiful Rubio-Musk feud rumors fueled by mainstream media. She said, Trump has put together an extraordinary team. I think it's pitiful that the mainstream media is working overtime to try to divide Trump and Elon and from other members of his cabinet, but their attempts are failing. Everyone is working as one team towards one goal, and it is to make America great again. Rumors swirled after a report from the New York Times, of course is extremely trustworthy, reported that on Thursday, DOJ lead Musk clashed with Rubio behind closed doors during a cabinet meeting because Rubio had allegedly not fired enough people at USAID. According to the Times, Rubio fired back, insisting that there were more than 1,500 State Department officials who took Trump's buyout offer, should be considered as layoffs. Leavitt on Sunday confirmed that no such feud exists, added that all is well between Rubio and Musk. Now, let's address another aspect of this, shall we? Anytime you have this many people tasked with a job that involves lots of other people and at times making difficult decisions, there are going to be clashes. This idea that if there is some sort of dispute or disagreement when it comes to policy or how many people should be cut, how much money, what is waste versus what isn't waste, you're going to have disagreements over this. The disagreements may get heated at times. And incidentally, what is heated for one person isn't necessarily heated for the next. This is what a lot of people don't understand. I go back to an author of the week that we had once a long time ago, and it was when Trump, it was either his first term, it may have even been when he was running the first time around. And the author of the book knew Trump, worked with him in some capacity, his days of New York and New Jersey, and he noted that what people don't understand is that is normal. When they see Trump and, he gets all fisticuffs verbally, and that makes some people uncomfortable, that is who he is because he's New York and New Jersey, and that is normal conversation. I was talking with someone about a wedding a long time ago that we had gone to, and a lot of the groomsmen were from New Jersey. And it was the event was here in the Midwest, and the groomsmen just left and right, normal conversation, were dropping the F-bomb. And, here in the Midwest, that was like, what are they, what is going on? Boy, they sure use the F word a lot. But to them, it was nothing. That was just common everyday speak. And I think that we can benefit from recognizing that when you're talking about people who have a lot of responsibility and they have a vision of the way things need to go and they believe it needs to go, and then you have somebody else who, is involved and tasked with a job in which there's dovetailing here. So you have somebody whose job it is to run the department, the State Department, and then you have somebody whose job it is to figure out where a number of these different cuts can take place. And yeah, the idea that every single one of these interactions are going to be like, well, look at this, we agree 100% is absurd, frankly. And I think that there needs to, in our own minds, the administration's going to handle it the way that they're doing, and I certainly have no issue with the messaging and the way that they are dealing with it. But I don't think there needs to be this instinct of pretending like there's never any sort of dissent, there's never any sort of disagreement. Yeah, because we're adults. And we have big responsibilities. And that means sometimes, yeah, it's going to get heated. And there may be yelling. There may be dirty words said. But in the end of the day, everyone has the same goal. And that is the point. That is the purpose. And at the end of the day, everybody's going to be on the same page once we get to whatever the desired outcome is. But this idea that somehow dissent means failure is juvenile. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Last week, we discussed a letter. Well, I read you the letter that was sent to the Justice Department, I believe, from the Attorney General of Missouri, Andrew Bailey, regarding concerns about some of the laws, the executive orders that were signed by an auto pin. And given what we know about Biden's cognitive, not just the cognitive decline, but the fact that increasingly people who are in the administration now are saying, yeah, Biden didn't know what was going on. He wasn't even allowed to meet with cabinet members. Oftentimes, their cabinet members weren't allowed to meet with him. I think it was reciprocal, their concerns on both ends of that. How many of these signatures were auto pin? How much of this did Biden even know about? Who really, truly, genuinely was not only running the country, but putting things into law? And coming up here, we've got to get a traffic update, but there is an oversight project investigation that they have revealed that every single document they have been able to find with Biden's signature, that it looks as if he didn't sign a single one of them, that every one was an auto pin signature. That next, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 77. And on Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 75.
The Oversight Project, which is an investigative arm of the Heritage Foundation, alleged an excessive use of auto pen signatures by former President Biden when he was in the White House. This is a Just the News story. And this isn't the first story regarding this. We read last week a letter that was sent from Andrew Bailey's office, the Missouri Attorney General, regarding his concerns and his request of investigation into who really signed much of this, particularly some of these signatures that would lead to changes in states that affect Missouri. There was also talk about a number of the pardons and how the pardons that he signed off on were pardons that contradicted his previous statements about pardons. For example, he would not pardon violent offenders. Well, some of those that he pardoned were violent offenders. But, of course, he also lied all the time. So he said he would never pardon Hunter, and he did that, saying, well, things have changed. And so was this just dishonesty, or was this an instance in which you had these people within the Biden administration that had, friends or donors or future jobs lined up, but I got a buddy whose nephew is in prison for whatever crime, and boy, it sure would help if he were pardoned by the president, and then, so you just got a bunch of people going in using this auto pen signature. We don't know the answer to these questions. Part of the reason Andrew Bailey's calling for an investigation into this. Now, the Oversight Project wrote on X alongside examples of Biden's auto pen signature, quote, "We gathered every document we could find with Biden's signature over the course of his presidency. All used the same auto pen signature except for the announcement that the former president was dropping out of the race last year." It's like that's the one they made him actually sign on his own. That's actually pretty sick if you think about it. Of all of the documents that he signed, every one that they could find since he was president, the auto pen is being used, so he doesn't even have to sign it. But when it came to the announcement that he was going to drop out of the race, overturning the election in all 50 states for the Democratic nominee, they're like, no, let's make him sign that one himself. The Oversight Project questioning who controlled the auto pen because they controlled the presidency. Following the Oversight Project findings that we mentioned earlier, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey called for the Department of Justice to investigate whether Biden's, quote, "cognitive decline allowed unelected staff to push through radical policy without his knowing approval." Bailey argued that if the widespread auto pen use turns out to be true, these executive orders, pardons, and all other actions are unconstitutional and legally void. And what an absolute mess. Perhaps we should go back to where you cannot use an auto pen. I forget the history of the use of the auto pen, but I recall when I believe I recall when it first started being used. And there were a lot of questions about whether or not, well, I think some questioned whether or not that actually was legal, or I shouldn't say legal, but whether or not that made the document legal, if that was legit, because it wasn't the president with his hand, with an actual pen, signing it himself, and questions regarding that. And also, why is there a need for it? And people noted, well, there's a lot of signatures that are needed by the president of the United States. And what if he's not available and it's something that's needed immediately? I want to say it was either Clinton or Obama, perhaps, that used, or it may have been Bush that used it for the very first time, but I could be completely wrong on that. This may just be one of those scenarios, however, in which a decision is made and it gets placed into concrete that other than, I almost hate to say, extraordinary circumstances, because when it comes to the interpretation of extraordinary circumstance, that essentially gets utilized in a fashion of convenience. But just saying no, the president of the United States has to put his or her signature by his or her own hand on the document. And if they're unable to do it for whatever reason, then there are bigger problems at hand here. And of course, I suppose if there's a national emergency situation, you have some sort of massive attack and you've got government facilities that are blown up and the president is on Air Force One. But, I mean, even in those circumstances, one would think there would be a pen available and paper available. But given the mess that we are potentially in because of this and the fact that we have no idea, we just don't, whether or not Biden even signed this, whether he was even aware of it. I'll find the audio and I'll pull it up and play it again from Speaker Johnson. I'm going to take a quick break here. And this was from, well, we played it several weeks ago. I'm not sure how further out from that was from the actual interview. But in which he talked about how he first realized, or when he really realized, the extent to which Biden's cognitive decline had accelerated. And it involved an agreement, something that he supposedly had signed, but either did not remember signing it or, given this autopin situation, perhaps never signed it himself at all. He wasn't even in the loop on the thing. We'll revisit that audio coming up. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Welcome to the show, everyone. Oh, we are also on none other than YouTube.
That's right.
Doing your little wave. Oh, I know we've talked about this before. There was a text that came in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talking text line asking why we're not on Rumble. So,
that's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, as program director, do you want me to create us an account?
If it's not a hassle, can we?
Okay.
Can we simultaneously stream or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to add a whole bunch. You do so much already.
Oh, that's fine. We used to, and then the streaming platform that we used did an update, and they made it very convoluted.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I'm sure there's a way to do it. Maybe I'll figure it out this week.
I don't have a Rumble myself. I really
I don't either.
even the accounts I do have, or the platforms I do have accounts, I never utilize them. I just don't. There's a Local for Less Ozarks coming up this Friday. Half price, $50 certificates to Springfield Little Theater's Exit Laughing for only $25. So it's half off certificates that you utilize to purchase your tickets for the event. It will be at Landers Theater, March 14th through 23rd. Okay. Started last week, we talked a bit about this letter that Andrew Bailey sent to the Department of Justice asking for an investigation into the auto pin usage by the Biden administration. Now, I believe that it's reasonable for people to think, wait a minute, this is a new concept. I do not believe it is. I do believe the auto pin is something that has been used in past administrations. The issue at hand here is, given the combination of cognitive decline by Joe Biden that has become very apparent, and has been for some time, but finally acknowledged by even the Democrat Party, but the subsequent revelations out of the administration itself that Biden was not even allowed to visit with cabinet members at times, that he, that he was not running the government. These acknowledgments are finally coming. Well, then what happens if somebody signs a contract in your name and it's discovered? Well, it's void, right? Because it wasn't your signature. Well, there's only one person when it comes to these, whether it's a law, a pardon, or so many other papers with signatures on them. There's only one signature that counts, and it is if it is a signature from the President of the United States. So then, much like any sort of contract, if it is discovered that that person did not sign it themselves and didn't even sort of like electronically sign it with an auto pen, because you and I probably have done that. I know I have before. Here, you can do an electronic signature and you type in your initials, or you can, in some instances, depending on the hardware, actually do a stylus pen signature. But if it isn't you that does that, I mean, that's the whole point of it, declaring that it's you. So how many things have been signed into law or executive order that wasn't Biden in the first place? And I wanted to replay audio from earlier this year with Speaker Mike Johnson, in which he's not talking about the auto pin, but his first realization that Biden was really, really far off. And part of that realization involves, something that required his signature.
I do stand by it, and I say this without any personal animus at all. I mean, in some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He is not, obviously, has not been in charge for some time. And I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it. And it's been very, very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal observation? What kind
well,
of
I
thing
mean,
did you see?
it's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked. I became Speaker in October 2023. And there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on. And I started requesting a meeting with the president because, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him. And his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill press corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
In retrospect, and it would be interesting to know what Mike Johnson thinks at this point, that we know that watchdog organization that evaluated every single document that was signed by Biden since the presidency, every one of them was an auto pen. In other words, it didn't actually require him to be there, except for the one in which he announced that he was dropping out of the race. That was the only one that they found in which his actual signature was on it. Mike Johnson's perception at the time is that Biden didn't know what he was signing, given the revelations with the auto pen. Do we know that he was even the one that signed it? And outside of a confession from whomever may have been the one to actually sign it, we could probably never know because of the cognitive decline. So it could very well be that he completely forgot, or that he didn't realize what he was signing, and everyone thought he knew what he was signing. Or again, someone just did the auto signature for him. By the way, these aren't little things. This was something that helped fund Russia in their war against Ukraine. This is in the larger context of the media and their portrayal of the Trump administration as somehow siding with Putin, when that executive order specifically helped funnel money to Russia, because what it was doing is cutting off the Europeans' ability to import as much energy from us, so they had to start buying it from Putin. So that was an executive order that helped Putin's war machine in Ukraine. What a tragic mess. And all of you hear the people that in that particular instance he listed in the room, Kamala Harris, you got the head of the CIA, Chuck Schumer, all of these people knew. All of them. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Kansas Territory Brewing Company. You can find out more about them at kansasterritorybrewco.com. You may see their offerings in area stores. If not, you want to try it, you can request it. Bradford Light, one of their offerings. Also, Pineapple Life Coach. The Bradford Life is what I consider, Bradford Light rather, is more sort of the go-to, perhaps. But I don't want to say more common, but pineapple, when you start talking about putting fruits and those flavorings, that's not for everyone. That oftentimes is for a more limited audience, if you will. But the Bradford Light is a great standard that you can have around and you can break out, and most are going to enjoy it. But if you are looking for something a little more exotic, Pineapple Life Coach, either of those offerings from Kansas Territory Brewing Company. Someone had texted, and we were talking about the auto pin, and someone said that LBJ was the first president documented to use the auto pin robot. Now, there are actually a number of different articles, and they reference the different usages of it. The Wentworth Report has a piece on this, and they note that in 2013, Barack Obama became the first president to sign an actual bill into law utilizing an auto pin. He was on vacation and didn't want to bother coming to Washington, D.C. What a shock. And so his office relied on a 30-page memo from President George W. Bush's legal team asserting that the president's presence was not required as long as said president had authorized the signature. And this, of course, is where you have the problem. What does that mean, authorized? And how do you know something was authorized unless, what is the standard for recognizing something was officially authorized? Well, it's a signature. So what the legal assertion made by the Bush administration that was used by the Obama administration is that a president's official authorization by way of signature on a law is valid as long as it's authorized by the president, which, of course, would be a signature, right? Well, apparently not. So that was the justification that was used to put something into law by Obama. However, it was used well before that. I saw one posting that noted that Truman utilized some form of electronic signature, though, of course, as time and technology has advanced, there have been variations of the so-called auto pin. But in terms of actual law, Obama was the first one in 2013 to utilize that. It brings, though, us back to the entire point, and is this something that perhaps, I would guess Congress would need to pass a law on this, saying that a president has to use his or her actual signature, because otherwise we end up in the situation we're in today. And that is, there are, according to, again, Heritage Foundation, every law, every document they could find for the entire administration, other than his "I'm not running for re-election" statement, was an auto pin. And so as Americans, we're left not knowing who actually signed all of these documents. We've got news coming up in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. If that is what you want, the place for you to start is I want a great homeloan.com. Friday, as we broadcast live from Scramblers, the home of our Friday Road show, Anthony Carricker stopped by, and they come by so they can talk directly to you. I say they. It's usually Anthony or Alex Carricker. And they're just big into making sure you have the best information possible in terms of making that decision. And we talked about a number of different things on Friday, but one of the messaging was, listen, if you are in a place in which you need a new home, they can make it happen. Obviously, got credit issues and so forth that are involved in it, but the idea that you have to wait for some perfect moment to occur is not something that is really based in reality. And so while you may think, well, it's not the right time, that's not necessarily the case. And it all boils down to, if you instead you're paying rent because you want to wait till interest rates are better or the prices of homes coming down, you are still paying a mortgage. It is just someone else's. And so every single one of those checks that you write to your landlord is money that could go in equity in a home that you own on your own. And then, of course, interest rates, they come down over time. You can refinance. So there are a lot of different opportunities there. Point being is, if you think, well, I'm just waiting for the perfect time, right now isn't it, reach out, talk with the Carrickers. You may decide it isn't for you the right time. But you may find out that really the reasons for not doing it are all in your head. I want a great homeloan.com because you do. There is a Democrat senator from New Jersey by the name of Andy Kim, and he was on State of the Union Sunday with CNN, or on CNN. And Jake Tapper was asking his thoughts on Trump's speech to Congress and specifically the reaction of some Democrats on the floor of the chamber with the extended interruption by Congressman Al Green, waving his cane and screaming and yelling. House Democrats protesting the joint, refusing to walk Trump in, traditionally as both parties do. Holding up little paddles like they were playing bingo. And ultimately, and I thought this was just hilarious, he said that, well, it's Trump's fault. He said that because Trump he's bringing the rest of the country down, and unfortunately that means even his own party is bringing themselves down to Trump's level. So that is Trump's fault, according to the Democrats. Their behavior is his fault. These people will take no responsibility for anything. Maybe Trump is such a great dictator. He's able to control even the Democrats' behavior. On, what show was this? MSNBC. Democrat from Maryland, Jamie Raskin, also addressing the issue and some of the pushback Democrats are getting because of their less than juvenile behavior last Tuesday during Trump's address.
Well, look, that's a fair criticism. We've stayed overwhelmingly unified through this, and I think it is a valid critique that we did not have one single strategic plan going into Donald Trump's address on that night, whether it was boycott, walkout, sign waving, heckling interruption, which is what Marjorie Taylor Greene repeatedly did to Joe Biden. Of course, Biden dealt with that like a man and just responded to it. Donald Trump couldn't handle it because he doesn't have the verbal dexterity to respond, and so they had to have Al Green removed. But
all right, I have to pause it here. I just can't help it. So according to Raskin, Joe Biden faced the exact same thing, but he had the verbal dexterity to handle it like a man while Donald Trump didn't, so Trump had Al Green thrown out. Joe Biden had the verbal dexterity to handle it like a man, You want to talk about still living in a state of delusion, not to mention, not to get too technical here, Trump as president, as a guest there, he is invited to address Congress for the State of the Union. He doesn't have the ability to throw anyone out. The Speaker of the House does, and that's what Mike Johnson did. So it isn't up to the president anyhow.
The last person who used a cane like that in the House of Representatives was Preston Brooks, who went over and beat the daylights out of Senator Charles Sumner before the Civil War. And he wasn't even censured for what he did, actually using a cane for violence as opposed just to get people's attention. And then, Al Green was making a very strong, valid, substantive point, which is there is no mandate to destroy Medicaid. And the vast majority of Democrats rejected the idea of censuring him. And really, if we were censuring anybody, it should have been Donald Trump, who I don't think had been back to our chamber since he incited a violent insurrection against us. And then he used his pulpit in order to call a sitting member of the United States Senate Pocahontas. So I think a racial and ethnic slur from the president was a far greater insult to the dignity and decorum of our chamber.
Well, he got it all in there, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
He got January 6th in there. He got he's a racist in there.
But yet it's not racist that she's the one that claimed that she was Native American for all of these years.
This is the just the brilliant trap. The trap isn't even that brilliant, but it's brilliant the way that it's played out, where Democrats defend her for Trump has Democrats defending Elizabeth Warren, benefiting for years off lying about her heritage, falsely claiming that she was Native American, Cherokee specifically. Wasn't it Cherokee, she said?
I can't remember. But I do know that she made money and benefited off of it.
Including, she submitted as a Native American recipes to a cookbook called Pow Wow Chow, which I don't know why. That sounds kind of racist. I guess it's not, but it just seems like that is the sort of thing that the left would claim is racist. But if you're a Democrat, it's okay. So Trump calling her out for what Democrats have long called cultural appropriation, that is, stealing someone else's culture for their own benefit. Because Trump calls her out for it, Trump is the racist. The only thing that Raskin didn't manage to throw in there was accused rapist. That was the one thing that he was missing.
That'll be his next interview.
Yes, maybe that will be his next interview. Keep it up, folks. J.D. Vance had a bunch of nut job left-wingers chase him down with his 3-year-old child. 3-year-old child. Something I've noticed increasingly about so many of these different events, these protests and the heckling, there's a lot of old women in them. Have you noticed this? The gray-haired old women. This is and old men too. I even saw this. There was another useless protest on South Campbell, the bridge over there, with totally conflicting messages. If you drove by it, we happened to drive by it. You couldn't even tell what it was supposed to be about. Evidently, according to a KY3 story, it was for International Women's Day. You would have no clue. No clue whatsoever. All I saw some Ukrainian flags and some LGBTQ plus flags. Those were the things that stood out the most. But you get a lot of these just. It's almost as if the protesters from the 60s feel as if they have their day again, but instead their protests aren't against the sort of deep state. Now they're on the side of the deep state, the entrenched government. They're against the people who are trying to take the government on. I've noticed these visuals, and even the people who confronted J.D. Vance with his 3-year-old. It's just a bunch of cackling old women. And it's nothing against old women, but I just find that to be interesting that once upon a time it seemed like it was young people, and all of a sudden it's people over the age of 80 that are doing this. But I guess that is in line with the average age of a Democrat congressperson, it seems. We'll have some of those stories and more coming up. We'll have traffic in a moment right now. Weather. We'll do a little bit of weather
Yeah,
there.
I got it for you. The first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 77. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 75.
I'll note the reason we aren't hitting the news from Ozarks First is because there's some technical communication issues going on from their end and our end, and so that isn't, we're not able to grab their audio. So that's why it is, if you notice, you're not hearing the local news. But we'll keep you in the loop on what's going on. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. J.D. Vance calls out screaming protesters for chasing his 3-year-old daughter. These evidently were pro-Ukrainian protesters, though it still doesn't appear as if there's necessarily a unified message as to what pro-Ukrainian means. Does that mean stop the fighting? Does that mean more fighting? Does that mean, exactly what does it mean? And in fact, in the video that someone took with their phone, they were all filming them. And you can hear one of them like, but people are dying. It's like, yes, that's the argument that Trump and Vance are using. That's why they say it needs to stop. Because people are dying. Like, what is it that you want? I don't think these people even know what they want. They just hate Trump. And so anything that is a conduit for them to verbally trash on Trump, they utilize. So the issue itself, they don't necessarily even have a position on, other than, well, we're on that side. Trump is characterized as being against Ukraine. So that means we're for it. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean you're for it? They never articulate that. We just need to stand by them. What does that mean? And does that mean troops? Because that's what Zelensky wants. He wanted a military guarantee. Is that what you want? You want to send your kids over there? Well, we don't want that. What? Then what? I'm getting really tired of people who do not offer up any sort of intelligent solution or option or alternatives being given time as if they are credible in their participation of debate when they aren't giving anything meaningful at all. Nothing. Oh, well, I got a flag and I'm pro-Ukraine. Okay. We'll get the video up. I won't bother playing the audio. It's a little difficult to hear because the person, well, there may be variations of the video in the one that I saw. You could see other people with phones up, so I'm sure there was somebody even closer. But it was a situation, I just paint the picture for you, in which J.D. Vance agrees. He's walking, he's got his 3-year-old child with him, and they're chasing him. I say chasing him down. They're bothering him. He says, all right, I will engage with you if after I answer questions, you will just leave us alone. And so they agreed. And he couldn't get an answer out because every time he did, another of them was cackling about something, using, just the standard slogans. People are dying, or what about Putin? Or I even heard one saying the Revolutionary War. They're just saying random things. And it's clear that they don't really want a dialogue. And that is clear because every time they ask a question, he couldn't get half the sentence out before another one was throwing some other cliche at him. You have to give him credit. He did what most rational people would not have done, and that is he tried to engage. I think because genuinely he's a nice guy. He tried to engage with people who had actually had no interest whatsoever in having a reasoned conversation. They just wanted to feel as if they were doing something. They wanted to feel as if they were making a difference. Oh, we got video of them. Oh, we're going to upload and make it go. Oh, we really showed them. Of course, what did it do for their cause of, quote, standing with Ukraine? Nothing. But that doesn't matter, does it? That's irrelevant. Here's a scene. I'm telling you, I noted before the break that increasingly so many of these pro-Democrat, anti-Trump protesters, they're not the protesters of the past, which were oftentimes populated or at least run by younger people. It's people over the age of 70 and 80. And I'm not noting this because there's anything wrong with being, heck, it's great to be active and to have some sort of something going on in your life at that age. But it's just, it really fits this notable shift of the Democrat Party being totally out of touch. And while you have Donald Trump out there successfully utilizing social media, having, the last election, a significant increase in young people supporting him, it's as if the Democrats are just doubling down on crafting this visual stereotype that it's nothing but a bunch of old white people. There was a Stand Up for Science rally in which, among others, the former National Institute of Health Director Francis Collins attempted to lead everyone in a sing-along.
We're joined together by this noble dream. Have you got that? So it's just all the good people, but the second line, part of this family, and the last line, we're joined together by this noble dream. Do that with me. This is a song for all the good people. Come on. All the good people who are part of this family. This is a song for all the good people. We're joined together by this noble dream. Well, this is a song for all of those dreamers. We're looking for answers to come our way. Scientists, doctors, Students, all seekers, we share in the hopes for a much brighter day. Come on now. Well, this is the song.
All right, and I mean, it goes on and on. Is it not like a parody?
Yeah.
If you were creating some sort of like a Waiting for Guffman or just any sort of parody film or a parody documentary about a bunch of washed up has-beens that are trying to find some sort of meaning in their life by just getting together and protesting against something for the sake of protesting, or because they just hate these people. They hate a certain group of people. So we're going to go around and protest. And it's sad. It is really sad. But at the same time, you can't help but believe in their mind that some of this is just taking them back. Like they feel young again, and here we are, and we're reliving our youth is what we're doing here. Now, essentially, we are supporting the opposite side of what once upon a time we said that we stood for, the hippies of the 60s, which this, again, you get the sense that that's what these people are, that this is their chance to feel relevant again, to feel alive once again. But once upon a time, they were protesting against the deep state. They were protesting against the CIA. They were protesting against these massive corporations, yet these are the people now they support. I mean, this is a guy, the former National Institute of Health director, Francis Collins, who was in charge during gain-of-function research and funding, this incestuous relationship with Big Pharma, with all these big corporations, intertwined with all of these different government agencies that the average American that just know nothing of.
Did you see the Daily Caller headline for this? It's it says, at anti-Trump rally, former NIH director sings the same way he practices science.
Yup. That's a very good headline. It's very and on point, because you know then what the article is about. It's just remarkable to see them on the side of the people that those individuals once upon a time railed against. And we don't know that they are the same individuals, but just the sounds of the songs, that it's all in line. It's cut and pasted from that generation. And just to see it on behalf of the big corporations and the deep state and big pharma and all of these institutions and organizations, it's a pretty remarkable thing. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. More left-wing protests over the weekend. Tesla vehicles, charging stations targeted as protesters denounce cutting out wasteful spending and Elon Musk. Tesla car owners, dealerships, charging stations targeted throughout the entire nation in their protest against electric car maker CEO Elon Musk and his involvement with the Trump administration in cutting out government waste. An Oregon Tesla dealership located 10 miles south of Portland was targeted by gunshots Thursday, damaging multiple vehicles and shattering windows, the AP reported earlier this month. A man was arrested after Molotov cocktails were thrown at a Tesla dealership in Salem, Oregon, the Salem Statesman Journal reported. In Massachusetts, several Tesla charging stations were set on fire. When firefighters arrived, multiple superchargers were engulfed in flames and heavy dark smoke. According to the Littleton police, more than half a dozen chargers were damaged. Brookline police recently arrested a Boston man caught on video, allegedly tagging Tesla vehicles with Musk decals and sharing the footage on X. When confronted, the man said he had the right to deface the property of others, citing free speech, according to the police. Police writing on Facebook prior to his arrest, "We'd like to speak to the suspect so we can educate him on the difference between free speech and vandalizing property belonging to others." Why is it the left seemingly, they know how, this is how they engage with people with whom they disagree. It ranges from yelling and oftentimes contradictory and incoherent signs and acts of violence. And these are individual stories. If this were the other way around, and you had all over the country Trump supporters that were causing property damage, Trump supporters that were burning down facilities or, shooting at vehicles, all in the name of, either pro-Trump or anti-Democrats, this would be a nationwide scandal. This would be something that the media would go around talking to local elected Republicans, getting their thoughts on why it is that they think that their supporters have, this cultural stream running through so many of them to resort to violence just to have their voices heard, and connecting the rhetoric of Donald Trump to this, and how it's Donald Trump's rhetoric that leads people to carry out these acts of violence. But when it's left-wingers doing it, when it's Democrat activists, pretty much silence from the national media. And if there is any sort of coverage, it's just a reflection of how extreme Elon Musk is. Those that are carrying out the acts of violence, they're not the problem. The problem is Donald Trump and Elon Musk. That is simply the result of the problem. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 77. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly sunny skies with a high near 75.
We were talking off air about the left and their protests and their total contradictions. And, for example, the left-wing protesters all over the country that are shooting up or lighting on fire Tesla dealerships and the charging stations. And really that doesn't do anything to help their cause, particularly when it is one that is environmental, or these are individuals that proclaim themselves to be environmentalists, but then they commit acts that are contrary to environmentalism, like lighting battery stations on fire. These clearly are not positives for the environment, but these are irrational people. And I think we know they're irrational because of the way that they try to carry out their argument. Not that it's not just that it doesn't make sense, but if you are trying to, whatever their end goal is, generally what they're doing is contrary to that. They harm the environment while trying to help it. Presumably also, you think about, all right, so they do damage. Well, insurance is going to cover it, and if it's vehicles themselves, and that's just going to require the manufacturing of another vehicle and a purchase of another vehicle, and so you have arguably the insurance companies in some capacity that are just funneling money back to Tesla. So they aren't hurting Tesla, they're helping it. They're not hurting Elon Musk, they're helping him. They're not hurting or helping the environment, they're hurting it. Everything that they claim they stand for, what they're doing is the opposite. And I would argue that if their judgment is so flawed, to put it generously, in how it is that they carry themselves, how can we trust their judgment when it comes to their positions on anything? It doesn't mean that they're always going to be wrong, but if you think about it in terms of just, if you know someone who is kind of a train wreck and, let's say they're just really, really bad with money. They spend it poorly. They always are having to borrow money. They are a walking contradiction. On one hand, they talk about, just fiscal responsibility, but then on the other hand, they behave in a manner that is the opposite of that. Are you going to listen to them when it comes to financial advice? I would think not. Would you take marriage advice from someone who's been married 8 times? Or engaged 4, and then they all break, you probably would not take advice from that individual. These left-wing protesters that claim that they believe one thing, yet their protest actually results in the opposite, and they don't have either the ability to understand and recognize that, the discipline to recognize it, or maybe they don't care. Is that the judgment? Is that the sort of person who you want to listen to when it comes to anything? Not me. Nobody's going to be right all the time. But the sort of person you want to listen to, or you're going to entertain their argument, is one that whenever they have a position and they realize it's wrong, or they think, well, I believe in this, so I'm going to do this, and then their action does the opposite of what they said they believe in, and they go, oh, well, wait a minute. I better not do that any longer. That's the sign of a person that has an intellectual approach that actually does take the time and have the discipline in order to really genuinely get to that actual end goal and care about their actions. But if it's somebody that doesn't do that, the behavior, for example, of Elon Musk and Doge and the Trump administration that we should look at as admirable. Instead, it gets criticized, and that is these instances in which Elon Musk himself during the cabinet meeting gave an example that when it came to cutting out wasteful spending in one of the departments, and he said they accidentally paused spending when it came to countering Ebola. And he said, obviously, that was a mistake, and so the next day we greenlit that again. Nobody was affected by it. But what happens is that gets portrayed as, look at them, they're out of control. They don't even know what they're doing. No, that's the way we want things to happen. Is it not? When an individual is in charge of something and they go towards a certain goal and then something occurs that is out of line with that goal, instead of just continuing to do it, they say, oh, wait, nope, that was a mistake. Let's fix that. That we should all want that, but the left criticizes that. I've watched on the networks that used as a narrative weapon against Doge. The fact that, they've had to undo some of the stuff that they did already. What sort of leadership is that, where you just go in like crazy and then, you cut a whole bunch of stuff and 24 hours later you realize that one of those cuts was a mistake and so you reinstate it? That's insane. No, that's not insane. That's the way it should be. You take the politics out of it and you just observe how people behave and whether or not they even make sense, and then whether what they say they want, their actions contradict that, or does it encourage it? And when it contradicts it, do they say, well, I don't want to do that anymore, or do they double down and keep doing it? Those are not people we should listen to. And while no one has a full monopoly on that behavior, it's as if the left is constantly trying to win a gold medal in that arena. Going to get a traffic update. More ahead. Pyramid Roofing Company. Talk at text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line regarding the left-wing protesters that we see across the country, oftentimes here in Springfield over the weekend once again. Message, a couple of my liberal friends actually believe these people are right-wingers trying to make the left look bad. They should only hope. That may be honest-to-goodness rationalization, because you can imagine if you are somebody ideologically on the left and you see people that share your vision of things behaving in the way that these people are behaving, I could see how you would want to believe, no. This cannot be true. This must be right-wingers that are trying to make us look bad. They may, genuinely believe it, but for purposes of self-preservation, rationalization. On Fox News Friday, former Democratic strategist Dan Turrentine on the issue of the Democrat Party today.
Jesse, it's embarrassing. I mean, I guess fake it till you make it. I mean, I think a lot of them right now have kind of lost their minds. They're trying to kind of out-Trump Trump. They're not being who they are, right? Trump is an authentic street fighter. Like, it comes natural to him to do the taunts, to try to get in people's heads. We need to go back to just like the basics here. I mean, we need to, first off, there was just an election. The voters approved of his character and conduct. And remember, it was his policies that got him elected, right? The main things are the big things. And we need to get off of the juvenile taunts, the videos, the F-bombs, thinking that's going to appeal to voters, and talk to them and meet them where they are. As the guest just said here a second ago, like the economy right now, we've got some things to talk about on tariffs, on DOGE. We need to be focused on the main things and not this silly stuff about, videos and canes.
The problem that the Democrat Party has is it is largely populated, not just activists, but even some members of Congress, with people that don't have the ability to make an argument. I don't say that lightly. Our university systems, our education system in this country has worked to turn people into activists that don't know they don't know how to think, but they know what to think. This is what they're told. If you've not seen oftentimes these videos of college students being challenged on their beliefs on campus, and oftentimes, and I'm not talking about in a confrontational way, it is to them because it's a person asserting that they are incorrect in their position on something, but not in any sort of like yelling or intimidating way, physically speaking. But oftentimes they break down, they start crying. And it's because they just genuinely, they're told, here is what you are supposed to believe because this is the side of good. All wokeism, DEI, CRT, girls being forced to compete against boys, any of the left-wing ideology is taught as this is just good. So this is why you believe, because it's good. And those people are bad, hence racist or homophobes or transphobes or whatever other listing, hate poor people, anti-science. This is why they use that terminology, because they don't have the ability to articulate in a reasonable way, or in any way for that matter, why it is that they believe what they believe. And so when you increase the party, or increase the portion of the party that is populated with those types of individuals, that's all they know how to do. They don't know how to do anything else. Frankly, it's unfair to ask them to when they have been trained specifically not to understand the issues, not to think about or articulate the issues. You are not to question if you are on the left. You do not question it because it's good versus evil. And how many times during the campaign did we hear it presented that way? It's about saving democracy. It's about good versus evil. When your followers become indoctrinated into believing that, there is no ability, because frankly, it's almost as if if you desire to understand why it is that you are believing these certain things, it's almost as if you're questioning it. So if you want to understand why it is supposed to be fair to force girls to compete against boys and shower against boys, if you ask those questions, then you are doing something wrong. You're questioning whether or not that is correct, whether that is good. And so that conditions people on the left to not ask those questions. And this is why they can't have discussions about it. All they do is call you a name, and then they storm off. Hey, Matt Walsh was good at it. The number of times that you see these on-campus conversations, somebody with a microphone, and they'll ask a question, and the person on the left, and it's just a common sense question that is displaying a contradiction in the left's ideology, and the person will just simply walk away. They'll just walk away because they don't know what to say. This ongoing theme of the problem within the Democrat Party, but when you have this on with Jesse Waters on Friday, this former Democrat strategist saying we need to get back to arguing why it is we believe what we believe, back to the issues. But those people in the Democrat Party are rarities today, and that's they have dug this hole. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Several gather in Springfield to participate in International Women's Day protest. To give you a sense how effective they are, we drove by. This was, or the one I saw anyhow, was the Green Bridge there on South Campbell by the Steak and Shake.
That was
Did you
the
see it
main.
as well?
Yeah, that was the main one that I saw photos of.
I thought it was either a continue the war in Ukraine protest or an LGBTQ protest because of the flags.
So clearly their messaging
Right, I know.
worked.
This is just, so even just the message they couldn't get straight. In addition to the fact that they did nothing meaningful whatsoever. You think about the time, like, well, you could have built a ramp for some disabled person to get into their home. All of the things that they could have done that actually had meaning. Well, we had our voices heard. Oh, okay. Well, I can just go screaming through a grocery store aisle and people heard my voice. I thought to myself, and this is, again, the contradictory nature of this International Women's Day. The one thing that probably would not have been tolerated there was somebody showing up with a sign saying, keep boys in boys sports and girls in girls sports, or protect girls sports.
Yeah, that would have not
Oh, of
flown.
course, yeah.
No.
No, not at all. For international, that's how messed up these people are in the head. I could be wrong. Maybe there were some people out there that were supporting the protection of girls in sports, but I highly doubt it, knowing what I know, knowing what we know about people on the left and how they are walking contradictions, and they do not allow dissent. There's no diversity in thought allowed, even if it's something that actually is some, a statement that is of actual support for actual women. You think about all the signs could show up with, International XX Day, that sort of thing. Of course, some of them probably would have been confused because it's science and everything, but I just drove by and I thought, go knock yourselves out. You can do whatever you want to. There's a bunch of people that sit around and feel good about themselves thinking, oh, how many cars do you think passed by? How many people do you think saw us? But ultimately means absolutely nothing whatsoever. Just the News has this story about this book. It's a fiction book, Sparrow and Vine. And I don't know what the book is about, if it's romance, if it's whatever. But evidently, just in this book, this whole book, there was one character that is quoted as saying, I was inspired by Elon Musk. I use this 5-step design process, I guess, as part of the dialogue, whatever the situation is. The author ended up writing an apology about the situation on her Instagram page because left-wingers demanded, we were calling for a book burning. How dare you have a character mention Elon Musk in a positive way? Author Sophie Lark writing, I want to start by saying how much I appreciate this community, your passion, support, and willingness to engage in meaningful conversation. I've got news. I'll pick this up on the other side. Publisher cancels romance book written by author who cited Elon Musk. So this is the story. I started this not realizing I was so close to run out of time in the last segment. Publisher is canceling a book written by an author. The publisher is canceling a book written by an author who cited Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk after backlash from readers who reviewed advanced copies. One of the characters in the book, Sparrow and Vine, is quoted as saying, in, I guess, conversation, "I was inspired by Elon Musk. I use his 5-step design process." Social media users directed critical comments at the author for citing Musk. The author wrote an apology about the situation on her Instagram page, reading, "I want to start by saying how much I appreciate this community. Your passion, support, and willingness to engage in meaningful conversation have always meant the world to me." This is not meaningful conversation. When you have people that want a book banned because they don't like the fact that a character cited somebody that they hate, that is not meaningful conversation. She went on to, Sophie Lark is her name. "That's why it's so important for me to address something I got wrong. It has been brought to my attention that certain lines in Sparrow and Vine were hurtful." Well, we can't have that. "Reading your messages and hearing your perspectives over the past 24 hours have been humbling, and I want to acknowledge the pain my words have caused. I am truly sorry." Bloom Books, the publishing company, told the New York Times that it's canceling the entire series. Now, who is it that's for banning books? See, that is much more in line with what banning a book is. Not saying that it can't be in a library at an elementary school. That isn't preventing the book from existing. This is. Now, she may be able to find another publisher, but it's clear the goal is to prevent people from even reading this book. Think how insane this is, anyhow. There was a time when there was a discussion in our country about whether or not it was proper to ban, what's the name of that book? It escapes me. It was a book that essentially told you how to make bombs. The Anarchist cookbook or something like that, if I remember right. It wasn't anything I read, but I remember it because that was an area of debate when it came to banning of books and censorship. Is if you have somebody that makes a book that tells you how to do illegal things, presumably for the purpose of blowing up buildings or people, is that something that's legit? We have gone from that to people on the left wanting to ban books because fictional characters reference someone that they don't like. And then the publisher canceling the entire series because of it. I have noted on this program many times that when it comes to books and the availability of books, if you're going to divide the political spectrum down the middle, you have both sides that call for their own form of availability of books. For people on the right, it is the belief that children in taxpayer-funded schools should not be given access to pornography. They don't call for the books to be completely banned. I've never heard that. These are books that oftentimes have not just X-rated descriptions of sexual acts, sometimes between adults and kids, but pictures as well. They don't demand that the publisher ban the book. They don't call for the books to be taken off the shelves of actual bookstores. They just say when it comes to determining what books are going to be available to kids, we do not believe that pornography is a book that should be available to kids in schools. So that is the right's version of what we're told is book banning. The left, they demand publishers do not make the book available at all, not for anything other than they just don't like what, in this particular case, a fictional character said. Now, you tell me who the book banners are. as usual, we see the demonstration here of projection in which people on the left portray the opposition as being the people that they on the left actually are. What sort of nut do you have to be anyhow? I can't even fathom that. Reading a book and there's something that a character says I don't like, so clearly there was also enough of a backlash of people across the country on the left that the publisher decided they had to, prove that they are fully in line and lack any diversity, and so they banned the entire series. That's not from one or two complaints. Can you imagine reading a book, a fictional book, with the expectation that none of the characters are unsavory? Nothing that any of the characters say are anything with which you disagree. How boring would that book have to be?
So I looked up this Bloom Books because I was just curious.
I'm sure are they lefties?
So whenever you look up just Bloom Publishing, Bloom Books celebrates stories with trailblazing authors. That's how they describe themselves.
Well, unless one of your characters says something that's triggering or offensive. The problem isn't the author here, other than the fact that she begged forgiveness for oh man, just how time. I was just thinking of this. Is this not supposed to be art? There was a time in this country when part of the artistic expression for a lot of people, particularly on the left, was the fact that you pushed the boundaries and ticked people off. Like that it was oftentimes understood that if you weren't offending someone, you probably weren't really doing that good of a job. Not even necessarily for the sake of offending someone, but just how boring do you have to be in which, if you don't have anyone, as an artist that has a problem with you or dislikes you, like, are you really doing anything? I'm not saying that that's legit. That's just the way that it was presented once upon a time. You need to be getting things riled up. You got to be out there and stirring the pot a bit. Otherwise, what are you doing? And now, culturally speaking, in our country, art has to fit a certain narrative. You're still allowed to offend. You just have to offend the people you don't like. You can offend Christians, you can offend conservatives, you can offend people who believe in capitalism. In fact, you're probably, admired for it. We know that you are. But if you offend somebody that believes what they believe, well, that's unacceptable, see? We can't have that. How pathetic. Traffic coming up here in just a moment. Right now, the latest weather, if you're ready for it.
I am.
Okay.
The first alert forecast from Colorton, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 77. And looking ahead to Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 75.
Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. It's funny, they protest Elon Musk being referenced in her book where she writes dark romance with murder and very dark themes. She could have a quote. So this story we're just talking about here. There's this author by the name of Sophie. The book is Sparrow and Vine. And the author, Sophie Lark, has evidently a series of these books, and because a character in these fictional books just referenced Elon Musk, left-wingers pitched enough of a fit that the publisher canceled her entire series, book banning. And if that same character had instead referenced the fact that we'd be better off if somebody assassinated Trump, that would have been perfectly fine. Because that's how deranged these people are. They're absolute deranged lunatics. Another example, Town Hall, The View's Joy Behar. She had made a comment that she can be friends with a Trump supporter, but would not give them a kidney because it's about morality, ethics, cruelty, and discrimination. These are personal human values. So she's openly saying, well, she would give a kidney to other people if they do not comply with her personal agreements, she would let somebody die. That's her position here. She'd be friends with them, which to me, you'd think if it was one of the two that you chose, you would give them a kidney if their life depended upon it, but you may not be friends with them. In her mind, and she labels it her moral values, it's about morality, she'd be friends with them, but if they were going to die, if she did not give them a kidney, she would let them die. The largest kidney patient group in the country, the American Association of Kidney Patients, was not amused. Quote, the American Association of Kidney Patients, AAKP, the oldest and largest kidney patient group in the United States, today called upon Robert Iger, Chief Executive Officer of Walt Disney Corporation, to immediately hold accountable Disney-owned ABC network talent Joy Behar, co-host of The View, for her incredibly callous remarks made on March 6th, 2025 regarding living organ donation and her abject lack of empathy towards the 600,000 Americans living on dialysis and the nearly 100,000 Americans awaiting a life-saving kidney transplant. The View is rated the most watched talk show on daytime television with an audience reaching in millions. What a sick and pathetic demonstration of where we are in this country, that show that does nothing other than falsely characterize women as being a bunch of idiots is watched by millions. They went on to note, for decades, March has been celebrated as National Kidney Month, and April has been celebrated as National Donate Life Month. Nearly 40 million Americans suffer from kidney disease, and the kidney stakeholder community uses March and April to drive public awareness of the unmet need for early kidney disease detection and greater living kidney donation. People living with kidney failure on dialysis have a mortality rate of over 50% within the first 5 years of treatment, as reported by TV Insider. Behar made her callous remarks of making kidney donations contingent upon the political beliefs of the recipient during the segment of The View aired March 6, 2025. It's because she's sick in the head. And the sickness that we see in somebody like her, that, by the way, she shares with a whole lot of people cut from the same political cloth, isn't even so much that she has such a cruel, callous belief about human behavior and how she would be, but that she thinks she's righteous for it. You could see somebody being like, listen, even if someone were dying that I was friends with, if they were a Trump supporter, I wouldn't give them a kidney. I know that makes me a horrible person, but that's just where I stand. She says she does it because it's her morality. It's about morality. She thinks she's virtuous for it. For all of the things that networks like ABC will, when they get into a position they feel that they have to apologize for offending, it's always somebody on the left. There's always that standard, what has become boilerplate statement about how, this doesn't represent who we are. But for something like this, one of your most viewed and apparently listened to faces of your network says that if a friend of hers was a Trump supporter and would die without her donating a kidney, she wouldn't do it simply because they supported Trump. Evidently, that is not out of whack for the values at Disney and ABC. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, for all of your needs. Emily was amazing to work with as a first-time home buyer trying to navigate the complexities of a fast-paced market. She did a wonderful job helping us find the perfect home, stay positive, even in a competitive market. She was professional, knowledgeable. She didn't pressure us to look at houses that would not work or go over our budget. We absolutely plan on working with her again if we ever need a realtor. Cannot recommend her enough. She's very big into straightforward honesty. When she and her husband Will came on One of Our Great Escapes, this is something we talked about. And the truth isn't always easy, particularly if you're looking to sell your home. You may have done some renovations or just even the color schemes that for you think are perfect, and that's a personal decision one makes. And it's easy for somebody who you have teamed up with to help you sell your home for them to just tell you whatever it is you want to hear. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Sometimes it's hard to be like, hey, listen. Like, oh, we picked out these colors. They're so wonderful. We have such pride in our taste. But that may not be what's in line with what the market right now is looking for. She'll tell you that. She's not mean about it. But her number one goal is to help you. And if that help is saying, hey, this, DIY job that you did over here, totally, or maybe something that your kids helped in, you just, I think it's so wonderful and neat. If it's something that's not going to really help you sell your home, she's going to let you know that. You get honesty with her. Her number one priority is looking out for you. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. This kidney association that is calling for Joy Behar to be held accountable for her statement that she might be a friend with a Trump supporter, but if the Trump supporter were dying and needed a kidney, she would not donate it. Because for her, it's about morality, ethics, cruelty, and discrimination. Now, I know you're saying, but that's what she's doing, but she's somebody on the left. This is actually a better question that I would love for her to be asked. If she were dying and needed a kidney donation, and the only person that was available to give it to her was a Trump supporter, would she take their kidney?
I bet she wouldn't.
I bet she might say that, but I bet she would. when it really came down to it,
She
she'd
would
figure out a way to
really-
rationalize
She would
it.
really say on air, I would never do that.
Oh, I could see her say that. I just wouldn't do it. Well, again, the weird thing is she said she'd be friends with a Trump supporter but not save their life.
Yeah, what kind of friend are you?
Wait, is that not backwards? Okay, I could see when it comes to just, like, there are certain levels as a human that you would do, and like, oh, well, will you be friends with just anyone? And like, well, no. Well, if there was a person who needed a kidney, she's not saying, well, there's some people that just won't donate organs. That's not her thing. She'll donate them, just not to somebody who's a Trump supporter. And so that, like, when it comes to the hierarchy of what situation will you overlook their political beliefs being counter to yours, like being friends with them, that won't stop you. But if it comes to saving their life, you're like, well, now that's just asking too, I'm not going to save their life because they're a Trump supporter. I won't do that. I'll be friends with them. Most people would rather it be the other way around. You know what? I'm all right with you not wanting to be friends with me. But if I'm dying, I would think that you could put your political beliefs aside. Apparently not. I want to play coming up for you what has become one of my favorite questions that the media has asked a couple of different times of Democrats, and that is, who's the leader of your party? Generally, I'm not a big fan of media asking questions in which we all actually know the answer. I find it, well, there's a number of reasons that I don't like it, but this is an exception that I'm really enjoying. Because to listen to these Democrats try and figure out a way to answer the question without saying what everyone knows, and that is there is no one leading the Democrat Party right now, is quite amusing. Tim Walz was asked this question recently. Over the weekend, Democrat Senator Slotkin was asked the question as well on NBC's Meet the Press. We'll play her audio, her answer to that, and it's just about as fun as Tim Walz's. I hope this is a question, like a snowball effect, that every time they don't get an answer, they decide, well, we need to ask another Democrat, and we need to ask until we get an answer, because I'm just finding great joy in it. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447-KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll have sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 72. Tonight clear with a low around 46. For your Tuesday, sunny with a high near 77. And looking ahead to Wednesday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 75.
Not a big fan of questions that the media ask that are asked to either make a point or we already know the answer of. I just think it lacks intellectual curiosity. However, there is an exception. I'm sure there's more than one over time, every so often. The current exception for me is asking Democrats who the leader of their party is. The question itself tells us how bad things have become for the Democrat Party, because I don't think there's been a time, no matter how bad things have been for either party, that you couldn't say who the leader was. Now, they may not have been a very good one. They may have been a horrible failure as one. But at least still everyone knew this was the person leading the party. To be in a time in which no one, that there literally is no literally no leader. That's a pretty remarkable thing. And I don't know. I don't know of a time that has occurred. Certainly not in my lifetime. On Meet the Press, Senator Slotkin was asked this very question about who the leader is.
Who would you say is the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
Look, I mean, people know me. I'm pretty straightforward. I don't think it's a secret that Democrats have been on their heels since Trump won the election. Right? I don't think that's something hidden. And I think it's on us to be clear about not only leadership, and there's lots of leaders in both parties, but also a strategy, right? And I think that's something that as Trump has been successful in flooding the zone and just like every day 15 things happening, we are still finding our footing. And I think you can't get better until you admit you have a problem. And for me, that's one of the things that I think some of the new voices in the party have really been agitating about, right? New senators, new representatives, new folks who are like, hey, we need to do more, and we need to be showing that we're actually having a plan to stand up on really important moments of inflection. So that's what I'm trying to do from within.
Did you get that? Part of what is entertaining when this question is being asked is that I'm amazed Democrats don't plan for these questions. They look caught off guard. She was, there's no secret that this and that. And I'm very straightforward now, and let me be clear. And now I'm going to spend the next 2 minutes Kamala Harrising you to death, in which at the end of it, you're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about. As I mentioned, this is from a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week or two ago. Tim Walz was asked the same question.
Sir, who do you think the leader of the Democratic Party is right now?
I think the voting public right now is what I would say, and I keep telling that. We're not going to have a charismatic leader ride in here and save us from this. And I would argue that the Tea Party, as it arose out of the ACA, well, where was that charismatic leader? It was John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, and a whole bunch of angry folks at town halls that had members of Congress like myself answering questions. So when people are looking around, where's the leaders or whatever, they are going to organically step up.
Well, isn't that a cute answer? Well, the voters. Well, you're not following then if the voters are the leaders of the Democrat Party, because, you know, the voters have said they are for deportation. The voters have said they are against girls being forced to compete against boys. So if the voters truly are, and that includes Democrats, the leaders of the Democrat Party, you guys aren't listening. But he actually said something that is telling here. He noted that when Obamacare was coming about and you had all of these Tea Party events, he cited that, you know, John Boehner and Mitch McConnell are, leaders of the Republican Party, but they weren't charismatic. She wasn't even asking who's a charismatic leader. She just said a leader flat out. And if you noticed, he was able to name leaders within the Republican Party at that time. Not great ones at all. If you ask, I think, most Republican voters today, John Boehner was not somebody that deserved high marks. Mitch McConnell certainly has not been. But he proved the point here. At least he could name some leaders or a leader of the Republican Party. The Democrats can't name anyone. I mean, you could say Hakeem Jeffries just because he is in the, quote, leadership position of Democrats. He's the minority leader in the House. But what does it say that nobody ever says him? You don't have Democrats saying, oh, Hakeem Jeffries. Or Chuck Schumer, who is the leader in the Senate. Nobody believes Chuck Schumer is the leader of the Democrats. There really, truly isn't one. And that's crazy. I mean, that's just crazy. Trump made headlines a few weeks ago because he gave what I thought was a really honest answer for good reasons when he was asked about supporting J.D. Vance for the presidency in 2028. And his answer pretty much was like, well, we'll see. I like that answer, honestly, for a number of reasons. I think it demonstrates the approach of Trump that actions speak louder than words, that it isn't simply about who's next in line, but about who is going to be the best person for the job. And I think it also reflects something that Trump has recognized, and that Republicans right now have the opposite problem, if you want to call it that, than Democrats do. Democrats have no one that at this time is seen by other Democrats as a potential Democratic candidate. But you look at Trump, and there's all of this talk, of course, about Vance, and then there's oftentimes the Ron DeSantis card thrown in there because he's run in the past, and he's been seen as, in his own right, a leader within the Republican Party. But I think what we fail to realize, and maybe Trump does get it, you look at his cabinet, so many of those individuals right now, and there's a lot of time to watch how it is that they operate as leaders in their own right. But just that listing of people and the way we've seen them behave so far is in a manner that you could see them being viable candidates for the presidency. Hegseth, Marco Rubio, of course, he's run before. Somebody I haven't been a huge fan of in the past, but he has really stepped up as Secretary of State. Kristi Noem thus far, and she's someone that has been talked about at one point as potential vice president, even running as president. And of course, she had that whole weird book release disaster that certainly didn't help her. But the job that she's done so far and the way that she has been able to be a messenger of the Trump administration on some of these shows has shown a consistency and a much more presidential tone. Of course, obviously, J.D. Vance. But when you start to look at the people that Trump has put in these cabinet positions, and there are a lot of, at this point, potentially very, very solid options for Republicans come 2024 or 2028, rather. And I say that it's the opposite problem that Democrats have. Some may say, well, that's not a problem. That's an embarrassment of wealth in terms of talent and potential presidential nominees. But that at times can be, especially Republicans. Republicans hate primaries. They hate the uncomfortable nature of them. Republicans always have this secret little wish that one amazing person will emerge and everyone else will drop out and surround them and everything will be just happy and wonderful. And while, of course, that is nice in nature, Republicans just, they seem to toil over that. So while for Democrats, their problem is having absolutely no one, at least right now, Republicans have the problem of so many potentially fantastic options that, I see that as a positive thing. I see that as good. Certainly better than the alternative, but to have so many tremendous options and to have that contest, to have those individuals debating one another and putting forth their arguments as to why it is they believe that they would be the best option. I think 2028 could be just, again, what would be considered an embarrassment of riches in terms of begin much earlier than that, of course, the presidential race. So to at this point in time, look at that landscape and have Democrats not even able to tell you a name of any leadership within their particular party is it's just polar opposites between the two. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Spring is right around the corner, which means severe weather is too. So now is the time to prepare your home and your roof before that severe weather hits, or maybe you had hail damage from the severe weather last year and you think it's probably too late to address the issue. That may not be the case, but time is running out. The best way to see if you have hail damage to your roof is to go ahead and schedule a free roof inspection with the Pyramid Roofing Company. They'll do a very thorough roof inspection for you, and then they will work through that insurance process without making you sign anything. So if you have storm damage from last year, or maybe you're just not sure, but you kind of want to get a checkup on your roof, go ahead and schedule an inspection with Josh today. Now you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com.
So we played the audio of Elisa Slotkin, Democrat senator. She's the one that was tapped to give the response to Trump's address last week, and she was on Meet the Press and was asked who's the leader of your party, and of course she couldn't name anyone. She was also asked about Gavin Newsom, and whether she agreed or disagreed with him when it came to the issue of forcing girls to be in men's sports. Gavin Newsom force girls to compete against boys. And Gavin Newsom, he made this big splash about how he was going to start having these podcasts with people with whom he disagreed. And this is clearly part of his pitch to the American people to be the next president of the United States. And so his pitch was, this is not politics. We're going to throw the political talk out. You guys want the average person and somebody who doesn't worry about politics. So I'm going to have people that agree or disagree with me. And one of the questions that Charlie Kirk, who we carry here, 8 to 11, Monday through Friday, p.m., asked Newsom about women and sports. And Gavin Newsom, he tried to do what it is that the left tries to do, or actually Democrats that aren't maybe extreme left, but they want leadership positions. They try to give an answer that satisfies everyone. And so he talked about, well, it is an issue of fairness, but we need fairness on both sides. And the problem that Newsom runs into is what the left oftentimes runs into. Instead of making everyone happy, you make everyone upset. And that's exactly what he did. Not to mention he's refused to sign legislation that actually protects girls when it comes to girls' sports, and so that's the way he's governed. But he didn't really give a clear answer. However, it was presented as he was against trans. I mean, all the left-wing trans organizations are just outraged by this and have really come out swinging on social media to the point that it's gotten media attention. And Slotkin was asked about this on Meet the Press.
Senator, do you agree with Governor Newsom?
Well, look, I think, you'll have to talk to Mr. Newsom and his podcast, and we're all talking about it now because it's, good controversy. For me, I grew up playing 3 seasons of sports. In Michigan, sports is like our religion, right? I wouldn't be here, I think, without the leadership training that I got in women's sports. But for me, it's like, let the local community figure this out, right? In Michigan, we have a process in place where if someone who's born a boy wants to play in women's sports, you have to get a waiver. We've had it happen 2 times in our entire state. So let the local communities, just like everything with schools, handle that issue. For me, though, I think, this issue is being sort of brought up in order to make sparks and see sparks fly.
All right, well, a couple of things for the broader issue here. One, this isn't just being brought up to see sparks fly. This is being brought up all over the country by thousands and thousands of girls and women. That is why. Because they are being told that they no longer have the right to assemble with only girls, that they do not any longer have the protections of Title IX in which they are able to compete against only girls. This is why it is coming up, because this is the place that the Democrat Party has brought us. Her attempt to avoid taking a position by saying, well, we should just leave it to all of these types of decisions should be made at a local level, where they weren't saying that when Biden threatened to withhold school lunches from poor kids unless schools complied with his demand that they recognize transgender boys as girls, or boys as girls who are transgender. There was no talk about how it should be a local issue. And we all know that's BS, because if, for example, you had some school that said, we're not going to allow gay kids to be in class anymore, do we think Slotkin would say, well, these decisions are best left locally? Of course she wouldn't. That is a way to avoid it. But this is what leads to the larger issue that the Democrats are facing. They seemingly recognize that they have a problem with the people perceiving them as being nutcases on the left, particularly when it comes to these issues. They also have this problem in which they have no leadership. Leadership requires someone who, when it comes to the major issues that people have an interest in, it requires leaders to take a stand one way or another. Trump knows this. He's pretty straightforward on his stances. The problem the Democrat Party has is the only people that are really willing to take a stand on these issues are the extreme nutjob leftists. The Slotkins, the Gavin Newsoms, those who, regardless of what their personal beliefs are, recognize that that is the losing formula, and they instead need the party to be seen as not that extreme to the left, but none of them will take the positions. They will not stand up and say no. This particular issue, for example, and it's a great one to use as an example because it's 80-20. Even 66% of Democrats don't believe girls should be forced to compete against sports, or girls should be forced to compete against boys in sports. So you would think that that would be a no-brainer for these Democrats that want the party to be perceived as being moderate. Is that straightforward? Girls' sports should be protected, and I will sign legislation that does that. But that is not what they do. They try to have it both ways because they don't want to alienate the left. They don't want to agitate that segment of the party itself. And part of the reason is because they know that in primaries, it can be problematic enough for them that they could lose in a primary. The only people within the Democrat Party right now that are actually taking stances as leaders are the extreme left that cause them to lose, while the more moderate individuals are too afraid to do so. And so this, again, is a hole that they keep digging for themselves. And the fact that you can't find any Democrat that potentially could be a leader that is willing to stand up and with no trouble interpreting what it is they're trying to talk about, but instead very straightforward, here's where I stand because this is the right thing to do, and this is how I will stand and how I will govern as a leadership, in a leadership position. None of them are saying that. It's just more digging of the hole. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. GOP senators calling for passage of Sunshine Protection Act to lock the clock. Rick Scott, Florida, called on Congress to pass the Sunshine Protection Act to lock the clock and end daylight savings time. He noted, every day I hear Americans who are sick and tired of changing their clocks back and forth. It's time to pass it. Senator Mike Lee replied to Scott's post, encouraged social media users to like and share if you agree. I think if ever there's a time when it can happen, it will be with Donald Trump as president, because Donald Trump, more than anyone, has demonstrated that it doesn't make sense to continue to do something just because that's the way that we've always done it. And it's that atmosphere that exists right now that makes it more likely than ever that it'll ever happen. I want to mention also here something that, because Trump over the weekend, he was being asked about economic policies and how he's noted that, listen, sometimes these things do take time. And I would encourage you not to bother yourself getting frustrated with people who are, going on, well, he really fixed the economy, didn't he? Because that is ridiculous. I saw somebody, you see it all the time, like with the price of eggs, which is largely due to the fact that Biden slaughtered like 150 million chickens. There's nothing meaningful long-term that can be done to improve the economy that isn't going to take a bit of time. And I would just, these people on the left, they want to agitate, and they aren't people that can be reasoned with anyhow, because reason is irrelevant to them. So I would say, don't worry about it whenever they carp about how, well, the economy, I thought it was going to get turned around. In due time, if Trump's able to implement the policies that he wants, it will. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.